I'll go ahead and get us going. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but thanks everyone for introducing yourselves and letting us know where you're tuning in from. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of orient us all to the event. 1 second here. Okay. All right. So first, just welcome to the Empa student panel. Wanted to give everyone an overview of how today's event will look. So for the first hour, just about under an hour, we're going to have moderated questions for our panelists here. We'll also do brief introductions, of course. So we'll, get to hear a little bit about each of our student leaders from all 5 of the Empas. And then after that, we'll take questions from the audience that have been submitted either through the chat, or if you see there is someone on the list named Cindy Chang and it says send questions to me. If you want to send her a question privately, you can go ahead and do that, but she'll also be monitoring your questions in the chat. So as we go throughout, feel free to submit your questions. And if you submitted any questions while you did the registration, we have those as well. And so we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. So again, moderated questions for the panelists, then a Q&A portion with questions from the audience. And then the final 30 minutes of our event will be breakout rooms, where each of the student leaders from each of the Empas will be in a separate breakout room. And you can opt to go to whichever breakout rooms you're interested in, so you can have direct contact, one-on-one conversations with the Empa leaders. And you can go to as many as you like. If you have multiple interests, multiple identities, you just come back to the main room and then hop back over to a breakout room. So what I wanted to do really quickly too is just say, what are Empas? Let's orient everybody to that first. So if you're not familiar, Empas stand for the Ethnic Minority Psychological Associations, and there are 5 currently. They are independent of the APA, or the American Psychological Association, and they are also independent of any of the divisions, divisions 1 through 50 something, I think it is now, of the APA, but they are recognized by the APA. So there's a web page that the APA has posted that lists the 5 different ethnic minority psychological associations, but we are not affiliated with the APA directly in that way. So just we want everyone to be aware of that. And each Empa, each ethnic minority psychological association, is independent of one another. However, we have a lot of similarities. And so we thought it was really important to come together to, share why we think joining an Empa is important and meaningful. And while our organizations are different and independent, we also share a lot of similarities in our missions, in our structure, and there are various elements that serve as a professional home. A lot of these groups serve as a professional home for students and professionals who either identify with one of these cultural groups or are just interested in working or researching these different ethnic groups and racial groups. So that's just a little bit of background as to what Empas are, but you're going to learn a lot more today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start introductions. I guess I will introduce myself too, real quick. So my name is Sheila Rizita Lab. I'm a student committee member from AMENA-Psy, one of the Empas, which is the American, Arab, Middle Eastern, and North African Psychological Association. I will be moderating today's event. Very excited to be here. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm a clinical psychology doctoral student at Rutgers University in New Jersey, but I'm currently located in Southern California with family on Tongva land. I just want to acknowledge the indigenous tribes that are here. And I identify as a 2nd-generation Iranian American. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to our panelists to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Evan.
I think I might get past the ball first. So I'm Evan August. I am the Student Circle Chair of the Association of Black Psychologists. I'm going to try to do my best to put everything in the exact same order that Sheila did, because she did it so beautifully and it was smooth. Can't promise that mine will be the same, but I am currently a rising 6th-year clinical psychology doctoral student at Fordham University. I will be completing my program at the DC Superior Court, so I'll be moving over there in a few months. Dang, I identify as he, him, and I'm currently residing on Mackinac territory, to acknowledge that as well. And geez, I think that might have been each of them in rapid succession. If I miss one, we'll get to it. We have like what, 2 hours together, so we'll be all right. I'm gonna popcorn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Evan. Thank y'all for having me. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited to have all these beautiful souls in this space together. My name is Elizabeth Cardenas Bautista. I am a rising fourth year in the counseling psychology program at the University of Georgia under the mentorship of El Delgado Romero. My pronouns are ella, she, and hers. The EMPA that I'm representing today is the National Latinx Psychological Association, also known as NLPA, and I serve as the student representative this year. And to acknowledge a little bit, I like to do a little bit about myself as well. I come from Mexico, El Estado de Mexico, right outside of Mexico City. My people come from different states and regions of Mexico with Afro-Latinx indigeneity and also Native indigeneity as well. And currently I reside in the state of Georgia, and I'm a Muskogee land, also Creek land as well. And just super excited to be here, and let's get into it. Kevin, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, great to see everyone today. I'm very happy to be here with all the Empa student leaders and as well as all of you today. My name is Kevin Lau. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am from Arizona State University, currently about to complete my PhD in counseling psychology. Very excited for that. I'm here to represent the Asian American Psychological Association. I'm currently the chair of the Division on Students, and I've been a member for, I want to say about 4 years now, so it's been quite a while. Today I'm calling from Los Angeles, and I believe I am residing on Tongva land. Just wanted to acknowledge the tribes that, were on this land. And in terms of my racial or ethnic identity, I identify as Asian American. Specifically, I was born in Hong Kong and moved to Arizona when I was really little. Yeah, so that's all about me today. And I will popcorn it over to Kristen.
Hello, everybody. It's great to see everybody and be a part of this panel with everyone. So my name is Kristen Pike. I go as she, hers. I'm also Mohawk. The program that I'm in, I'm at the University of Montana. I'm a rising 7th year, going for my degree in clinical psychology. I'm actually on to internship next year, so one more year and then I will be done. I'm excited. I am representing the Society of Indian Psychologists. I am a student representative, and I'm actually on my own tribal land. So I'm up. It's a little weird, but yeah. So I'm actually on my own tribal land currently. So I don't know how to say that, but I'm acknowledging that I'm on my tribal land. And then move on to Bahar.
Thank you. Yeah, like everyone else, I'm so excited to be here and so honored to be speaking with other student leaders in psychology. My name is Bahar Amini. I am a second generation Iranian American. I use she, her pronouns. I am a rising 5th year counseling psych PhD student at the University of Kansas, but Southern California is my home. So everyone who's there, I'm so jealous. I can't wait to go back. I am the member at large student slate. I'm also a student member at large for the American, Arab, Middle Eastern, and North African Psychological Association, and currently residing on Kickapoo, Ka, and Osage land at the moment here in Lawrence, Kansas. And I will pass this back to Sheila.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for introductions. So we'll go ahead and just dive right into some questions and hearing more from each of you. So to start us off, can you each please tell us why you joined your EMPA and how it has made a difference in your life as a graduate student? And I'll go ahead and start us off with Elizabeth.
Okay, I had my finger on the mute button. Yeah, thanks for letting me start off. I think one of the things that really brings me to this question, the thought of it, is my actual first ever academic conference that I attended, and that was the NLPA conference in 2019. And I didn't know about NLPA or about any Empas at all. I'm a first generation student, and I think one day I woke up and I was like, you know what, I want to get involved in psychology. I want to be a psychologist. I didn't really know what that looked like or what the steps were for it. I also, growing up here in Georgia, didn't have any professors or teachers that were Latino, Latina, or Latinx. And so I didn't have that representation, and I thought I had to go to like California or Arizona to be able to have that type of community. And I have just been so grateful to have the mentors that I do. When I actually went to undergrad, I met my first Latinx psychologist who happened to be my professor for abnormal psych, Dr. Edgar Werther. Shout out to you, changed my life forever. He connected me to my mentor now, Ed Delgado Romero, and that's where it all started. I was introduced to NLPA. I was told about all the great things that they do, they represent. And so when I went to my first NLPA conference, I was just blown away. That being my first conference ever, I was just really blown away by being around folks who not only look like me, but were interested in working with the Latinx community, and also understanding that Latinidad is so expanding and it looks so different. It's multi-layered, and the beauty in that. So that really is what made me join NLPA, and I've been here ever since. I can go ahead and send it to somebody else. Kevin, do you want to tell us about your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. So, to be honest, I was only a second year at the time, so, wasn't quite sure. I was still trying to navigate my way through the professional world. And I heard of APA from a few of our professors as well as our students. So I decided, I'm going to try to present at that conference. My advisor was always suggesting that I, present my research everywhere. So I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And, for my very first conference, I just noticed how, there was a really friendly and familiar vibe going on. And I just really felt like I belonged there. It was a group of Asian and Asian American and Pacific Islander professionals who did research that were in line with what I wanted to get into, which was on Asian American mental health. And, there was just not a lot of representation from what I've researched beforehand. So to see that there's a group of people trying, working so hard on this specific area, it was just so inspirational to me. And I volunteered at the next event, and then I became a committee member, and then, here I am today. So that's kind of the story of how I joined and grew along with it. In terms of how it's made a difference in my professional life, I've kind of alluded, I've grown professionally as a result. I was able to present my research and promote myself. But I also met a lot of friends along the way. And, without my Empa, I wouldn't have met all these wonderful student leaders from the other Empas today, and I wouldn't be at this event. So yeah, very happy to be part of APA. And I will go ahead and popcorn it to Evan.
Thank you, Kevin. So for me, I found out about the Association of Black Psychologists, I believe, about a year before beginning my program. I was at what's called an emotional emancipation circle. For those that don't know, we can get into some of the programming that AMENA-Psy has, but basically a collective support group for Black people. It was being hosted in Brooklyn. And I went up to the facilitator afterwards, and I was very, very nervous about beginning a doctoral program, because I had heard so many horror stories about what it's like to get a PhD and how isolating and how, little support there can be. And she just simply said, like, just find the Association of Black Psychologists, find your people in there, and they'll carry you through it. That's all I knew, right? And so when I began the program, I made sure to sign up. I went to the conference, and I was just floored I was floored with the radically different context I found myself in, right? You could be at, there's plenty of different conferences, but they're so, I think, rigidly professional in a way that sometimes silences your authentic interest in your authentic self. And at the AMENA-Psy, I found a group of people that were willing to put who they actually were, what they've actually been through in conversation with their work, because those things are inseparable. I found people who are willing to kind of challenge major paradigms within psychology in order to really grapple authentically with what it means to be healthy, right, in our current context. And so the ability to do that kind of work, it's been transformational for my graduate experience. And I will send that over to Bahar.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of like similar, reasons for joining. Little bit of a different story. So AMENA-Psy is fairly new, and so we've only kind of been around for a few years, and so I didn't know much about. I didn't know what Empas were or what AMENA-Psy was until 2018. But I joined because, well, for two main reasons. One, I was looking for a place where I belonged. Simply, I was looking for, being the only Middle Eastern in my program, in my department, actually, I craved for people to look like me, have similar cultural backgrounds or interests or experiences. And so one was just to find a space where others maybe, could share that experience with me. The second reason was that when I, entered the doctoral program, I really wanted to do research on MENA populations and, increase the psychological scholarship on MENA people within the US. And I figured AMENA-Psy must be like the one space where others were doing the same thing. And so this would provide an opportunity for me to consult with other students or professionals and learn more in that way. How it's made a difference in my my graduate experience? Well, since I joined in August of 2018, I would say, similar to what Kevin was sharing, like I've grown in many ways. I've grown my network, both personally with friends across programs and state lines, and professionally, met a lot of professors or researchers and practitioners, which has been amazing. I've increased like research experience and being able to do, conduct research with MENA populations by working on research projects with other members within the organization. I've definitely gained a lot of leadership skills since we are so new. There's a lot of opportunity to, try new things, and I get to work with like amazing students and other members that way. So definitely increased skill set in that sense. And I will say, like, I think more importantly for me, how it's made a difference is that I've been able to build confidence through like mentorship or other, opportunities. I've been able to gain confidence in my ability to own my identity as an Iranian counseling psychologist. So that's, I'd say, make a difference. And I'm going to pass it on to Kristen.
Thank you for that, Bahar. So the primary reason why I joined my Empa was actually because my advisor. So I had a Native American advisor when I first started graduate school, and she really changed a lot of my perspective of how to be a Native American psychologist and what that meant. So through the course of working with her, she introduced SIP to me, and from there I was able to meet a variety of different people. I was actually able to meet one of who would be a part of my dissertation committee members through SIP, and who has really helped to foster my growth. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to find a community, like many other people had said. And following the passing of my advisor, I was able to do that. So after she had introduced this community to me, she ended up passing. And through that course, I was actually able to get a lot of support through the people that were a part of SIP that helped to kind of help support me through that process of, through the grief that, many people don't have to experience through graduate school. And then also on top of that, like having people that would step up and end up being on my dissertation committee. I didn't have a Native advisor after she left, but I found someone who kind of filled her role. So I can't, thank SIP enough for kind of taking me under their wing and helping to foster my growth as a Native American psychologist, because there's just so much that I had grown professionally as what does it mean to be a Native American psychologist, and then who can I turn to? Like, who are those community members that I can turn to and know that I'm going to have that support regardless of whether or not my advisor was still there and present. So it's amazing. It was an amazing kind of opportunity for me, and I cannot thank my advisor enough for supplying that. And on top of that, I get to meet some lovely people from the other Empas and get to, join this amazing panel and kind of move forward with like, how can we spread the word of how wonderful all these communities are for us as students. And I'm gonna popcorn it back to Sheila.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your responses. Our next question is, can you share a little bit about what opportunities are available for students specifically within your Empas? And feel free to share any recent examples of programming as well. And I'll start this off with Kevin.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for students in AAPA. First, like I mentioned, how I started out was I just presented my research at conferences. So there is that opportunity for students who are interested in kind of promoting their research, working on their presentation skills, that sort of thing. Also, you can volunteer at the conferences, doing things like kind of managing the book drive or helping guests find wherever they need to be, sort of thing. And traditionally, how we've done it is like, if you volunteer, they would take at least part of your registration fee, waive part of it. So it kind of comes with a reduced fee, or maybe your whole fee coming too. So that's a pretty big plus, I would say. And speaking of the conferences too, ours is coming up in October this year. We try to kind of alternate between, because we're still trying to create our own individual identity outside of APA as a whole. So what we do right now is 1 year we'll do our own individual conference, and then the next year we'll do a combined kind of with APA and APA. At least that's the plan for now. There might be plans to change it in the future, which we're constantly in discussion about. And thank you. Yes, Pooja, that is the link to the membership. So thank you for providing that. Also, we just started a more structured way of providing mentorship, because we recognize a lot of APA students don't have kind of mentorship in their own department. So we've been trying to set up faculty members or professional members of APA with groups of students to provide some kind of guidance or advice or whatever they need. Right now it's on a more group basis, but we're hoping to move into a more individualized basis. There's also a lot of financial opportunities. Like I mentioned, there's also scholarships and awards for outstanding students in different areas: research, advocacy, clinical. And of course, there's opportunities to take on positions just like, my chair position. Okay, so took up enough time and I will popcorn it to Bahar.
Thank you. Yes. Also, very similar to what Kevin shared, we have lots of opportunities as a new organization. We're constantly welcoming members to volunteer for various committees. We're actually having our second conference this fall, this September, our virtual conference, standalone conference. And so that's an opportunity for students to present at as well, submit posters. So we're actually accepting proposals for that right now. But in terms of like opportunities to get more involved and like meet people, our various committees are constantly recruiting, annually, but biannually. We have the advocacy committee, the conference planning committee, the newsletter committee, student committee, recruits every single year. And also for like leadership positions, my position's actually done this year. So 2-year term, but so we'll have elections this fall as well. But yeah, we also, opportunities, one thing I'll mention, don't necessarily have to come through leadership. One thing that we encourage members to do is just use our listserv to connect with others. So for instance, we have a group of students who were really interested in having monthly discussions around decolonizing, Arab MENA psychology. And so they just put an email, to our listserv, asked if anyone was interested, and they meet monthly informally via Zoom to just have conversations and build those relationships. So we definitely encourage those sorts of, gatherings and community as well. But because we're so new, there's just, we love new ideas and people who are willing to, take the lead. And I will pass it off to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Bahar. I think for us, it's very similar. And I think one thing I really want to highlight is just the power of our students and our student members. So NLPA currently, this is the most recent number I have, we make up 53% of membership. So our student members are out here very much in leadership positions within the org and outside of the association. So within their own circles, their own universities, they're doing great research, they're connecting with one another. And I think one of the biggest things for me, and kind of goes to the first part of the question, is like, how has it changed? How has NLPA or our Empaths changed our experiences? And really just connecting with students. We don't have a specific like peer-to-peer mentorship program, but it just kind of happens. So folks are able to work with one another from outside their own institutions, specifically around conferences or in other projects or in other dissertations. Like, people are able to come together and just really be there and build that community. And we're able to give each other resources. So if we're going through any difficult times, particularly in our own programs, or we're having challenges, or even while we're doing our dissertation process, or even applying to doc programs, we're able to get online and help each other out. Currently, we have a pretty good active Facebook page. This year, we're expanding our networks to Instagram, Twitter. We're talking about TikTok. So we're basically trying to really get connected with folks on a larger scale. So we also have actual mentorship program where you apply for, you let folks at NLPA know that you as a student want to be connected with folks who are either early career, mid-career, or late career. And we do our very best to try to accommodate everyone. I do want to acknowledge that we do have a lot of counseling and clinical psychology folks, but we really want to also open the avenue to other parts of psychology, school psychology, developmental, forensics. And so there are things that we're doing within the organization to help us grow, but we definitely want to continue to do that. As what you all mentioned, we provide a scholarship for folks who want to come to our conference. And a little bit of a plug, our conference is April 15th and 16th, and they'll be virtual, accepting proposals now. And we also lastly have amazing special interest groups that we call. So these are folks who are specifically interested in working on topics. For example, just to name a few, we have an amazing Orgullo Latinx, which is the sexual orientation and gender diversity special interest group. We also have Undocumented Immigrant Collaborative, just to name a few. But we're doing some things here to really support our students. I just want to acknowledge, to kind of wrap it up, that students are so powerful, and we have, not just in NLPA, but other Empaths, we have so much power. And so we really try to encourage all of our students to get involved on all levels of leadership within our organization and out of it. Evan, did you go? That was real long, sorry.
No, that was great. I'm so happy you finished with that. So as very brief context, the Association of Black Psychologists was started in part by the activism of students. In 1969, a group of Black graduate students took the stage at APA and demanded substantial shift from the organization. And when that did not occur, they partnered with a group of professionals that had done the same the year prior. And that's in part how the Association of Black Psychologists was born in around 1968, 1969. And so because of that, we have, again, like decades and decades of examples of student leadership and student engagement to really shift not just the organization, but the field. And so I could run through, I'm not gonna have enough time to run through all the opportunities, but for instance, like this year, I was a part of a committee assigned by the president of the Association of Black Psychologists to create the Sawubona Healing Circle intervention, which is a virtual healing circle specifically for racial trauma during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? There are a group of committees that have been started directly in response to the police killings last year in terms of the Incarcerated Families Committee, where a lot of our students and professionals with forensic interests gather and kind of coordinate their efforts around how to best engage issues of justice. We have the General Assembly, right? So the General Assembly is a group of committees and presidential committees specifically tasked with, some of them are international affairs, where we collaborate with people throughout the African diaspora. We have the Forum of African Psychology, where we leverage our partnerships with South Africa, and again, through, I think, also in Cuba and Haiti, Jamaica, to create programming, right, designed to discuss our mission in terms of shifting African-centered paradigms. And again, I could go on and on and on. The last thing I'll say is we also do have a Agengnaship committee, which is about partnering people with, we don't like to use the word members. Agegna is more like a family where we put professionals and late stage graduate students and early graduate students and undergraduate students together to pull each other through the experience. So a lot of stuff. I'll throw some things in the chat, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff. If you're a student, we would love to have you. And I'll send that to Kristen.
So what we kind of have in regard to the SIP is primarily like we have quarterly student talking circles of sorts. It's for us to kind of provide you with the opportunity to get to know the other students of SIP and provide that kind of dialogue among students of SIP. Just primarily, you can be a graduate student, you can be an undergraduate student, you can just be interested in psychology, so it doesn't really matter, but we wanted to provide that space for students primarily. And then on top of that, we have 2 student representatives that are elected positions. So both of those, through this course of, getting to know a little bit more about SIP, if this is something that you're interested in, then that's something you can totally run for and try to, attain a position in SIP and start to make changes and, advocate for what students would like throughout the societies of Indian psychologists. And I think that's something that's really wonderful about this particular program that I've been a part of, this organization, is that, students, they want to hear our voices. And I think that's really important because we are just making those changes and starting to advocate for students and how, what can we do for them more primarily. On top of that, we also have a SIP mentorship program. So what that is students you apply for it and then you are matched to a mentor. And then through that, you work with that mentor for about a year or so. And you do webinars, you just meet with the mentor specifically, but that can be someone who's like an early stage, late stage, mid stage career psychologist. And through that, you kind of develop a relationship with another, Native American psychologist. And the primary goal of that is to make sure that we have those, professional contacts for the other people within the organization. And you're always meeting people throughout the community and making sure that you have people that you can turn to. So that's all I have. Sheila, you can take it away.
All right, thank you, everybody. The next question, you sort of alluded to this, and I think we're getting some questions in the chat too about what does community look like in your organization, and specifically, how do you foster community when some of these organizations are quite large? Not all organizations are, but especially when an organization is large. Like, how do you foster community? What does community look like in your Empa? Let's start with. I don't want to put it back to Kristen, but Kristen, would you want to start? Go for it.
Yeah, so what community kind of looks like within the organization is that, you have someone to go to. I think that's what the biggest thing is that I'm trying to kind of share with everybody that has come to this panel, is that you may not necessarily know like a professional psychologist, or you may not fully know who it is, but everybody's always letting you make connections. And when you go to the SIP conference, which I forgot to mention in my last answer, which is in the end of June, it's just like a big family of sorts. They all know that we're going through graduate school, or we're interested in psychology, and we're just there to kind of support each other. And I think that's something that I've really noticed throughout the course of me being a part of SIP, is that I know that if I need a question or have a question about something, there's someone I can go to and they're going to provide me with that support. You may not know them 100%, but you know, you can easily walk up to anybody and be like, oh, I'm concerned about this, or I have a question about this, and then they're gonna, you know, answer your question, provide you with that support. And I think that's something that's really amazing about this organization, is even though we may be a little bit smaller than, you know, some of the other organizations, there's a real sense of community among everybody that is a part of it. And I think that's wonderful, because there's not many Native American psychologists. I can't even give you the exact number, but it's not a lot. And I think for us to all kind of be there and support each other throughout this process, I think is really important. And you know, I've always felt like I had that throughout this course. So I'm gonna send it over to Bahar.
Thanks, Kristen. Actually, great segue. Also, in terms of community, like, wow, we're also pretty small, and you know, I would say that majority of our membership is student members as well. So the community is very young, but we also really rely on you know, the experience and expertise of our, you know, professional members who help us a lot, you know, when we need it. But yeah, the way community looks like takes many forms. I will say that one way that we foster community within AMENA-Psy is through, like, especially now, like, virtual gatherings. You know, so some of them are just for connection and support. You know, student committee holds community tea times that are just check-ins, you know, to meet people, talk, what's going on, vent. And then we've also held some healing spaces, you know, depending on current events that are going on, and just, you know, places to come together. We also have, like, instructional, you know, gatherings and webinars. You know, we just recently held the We Are MENA webinar that was led by the student committee. It was the We Are MENA campaign that was advocating for the inclusion of MENA in research. But we've also done, you know, members only, like the process of board certification. So we have those gatherings as well. You know, prior to the pandemic, we would meet annually at APA, you know, and now that we have the conference, you know, that's another way of, like, fostering community and coming together. But I mean, ultimately, I think you just build these relationships, and you just know that other people are, you know, experiencing similar, you know, graduate experiences or societal experiences, and being able to support one another is so important. And so just feeling like you're understood, you know, so community for us is just being validated. And we have those spaces to support that. And we look forward to, like, in the future, being able to do these things in person and meeting each other. So I will popcorn it to Kevin.
Thanks, Bahar. Yeah, so like Bahar and Kristen mentioned, you know, a lot of support and validation, and I find that to be true in AAPA as well. People are super supportive, and I think that's been really important with, you know, of course, in 2020 with COVID-19, though, there's been a rise in hate against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So, you know, we're constantly just, you know, checking in on each other. There's a lot of emails over listservs to keep people up to date on things, and APA itself does a really good job at communicating about things that they're doing for the community at large as well. Because I think right now, you know, our sense of unity and community has been very strong. You know, and there's also a lot of representation as well. So APA has, I believe, 7 divisions at the moment. There might be an 8th one coming soon. So, you know, there's a division on women, there's a division on practice for clinicians specifically, for Filipinx Americans, for South Asian Americans, for the LGBTQ community, and division on students. Can't forget that one because I'm a part of it. But yeah, you know, and we're also working on creating one for division on, like, a South Asian or Southeast Asian division. And also there's one on Asian Americans with multiple heritages too. So we recognize that, you know, Asian American, the term is kind of complicated because it just kind of lumps people in as a whole. So we try to give every group their needed space. And through that, there's, like, these subcommittees forming as well, which I really appreciate. But yeah, you know, like I said at the beginning, one thing that's always been true for me at APA is how friendly and respectful people are. So community just looks like support, kind of family relationships and validation. And I will pass it to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question. And I think it definitely varies from, experience to experience. But I will say, to add on to Kevin's point, particularly within our organization at NLPA, we definitely want to make sure that we don't see Latinidad as a monolithic, but really understand that there's so many layers to it. And all of those layers need to be explored and celebrated. And we need to be doing that and rooted in social justice and efficacy ways. And so I think community can look very different, especially in the groups that exactly like if you're specifically interested in studying a certain area or just being around a specific topic, then those communities can join there and those connections can join there. Previously to us going virtual at conferences, very friendly, open environment. You will have folks that we would consider as elders or folks who are well in their career, available to talk to you without any hesitation. And I think most of all, there's been this real culture of encouraging students and motivating students to take up as much space as needed. And I think as much space as we want, which is all the space really. So we're the next leaders. And so I think that's just really important, at least in my experience with NLPA. I've really been able to hone in that type of community where I have folks, not only peers, but folks already in the field who are willing to encourage me, to push me when necessarily, but also support me when I need it. And I think also most importantly as well is understanding that we need to learn how to step aside and allow others to be the center of the conversations or take up the space or be that next leader. And so I think NLPA very much is doing that thanks to the student advocacy that we have going on. And so I think that is the type of community that I was really wanting to be a part of, and that's what I got. So it's just really important to be able to name that. So community can look very differently, exactly what you all mentioned, but I think also acknowledging that we need to evolve as our organization evolves and as our members continue to bring in great ideas and being comfortable with shifting that conversation and that focal point. So yeah. Evan, did you go?
No, this is great. And no, I was very happy about this question because in talking about all the opportunities for students, I neglected to actually mention the student circle. So I am the chair of the student circle again, so I think it's important that I discuss that. So, but in terms of community, the student circle does the bulk of, I would say, the work fostering the community for students in terms of providing community events, which by and large right now are virtual. That's look like we have bi-monthly book clubs where we discuss the work of Frantz Fanon, Bobby Wright, Linda James Myers, right? Radical psychological thinkers. We come together with our elders, right? We'll have Mbangi sessions where people will, students will have the space to discuss some of the paradigms, some of the ways of thinking, some of the practice that has been established before them and ways that they want to critique it and challenge it, right? We'll be in conversation with the very people who founded those ideas, and that's powerful. We have the Black Thought Club that was started by, I believe, Robina, our communications chair, was on here, right? An opportunity to be in conversation with people from outside of the Association of Black Psychologists about critical issues and critical topics. We usually do that on our Instagram live sessions. So there are any numbers of opportunities to come together to push not just the association, but again, like the field forward. And I love that Elizabeth finished by saying that, because we are the future leaders. And the Association of Black Psychologists expressed mission is the liberation of the African mind, the empowerment of the African character, and the enlivenment and illumination of the African spirit. And we recognize that as we hold this responsibility and this duty, we all have a duty, right, and a responsibility to engage in that work. So we embrace our students. We want them to be comfortable because we know these are the people that the field like rests on. So that's the kind of community that we have at AMENA-Psy. I'm gonna send that back to Sheila.
All right, thank you everyone. I think we'll have time for one more question before we then move to the Q&A portion from the audience questions. So again, audience, if you have any questions you are wondering about still, please either send them to Cindy Chang or post them in the chat, and we'll be looking at those. So the final question here before the Q&A portion is, what is your vision for student membership? So what is your future vision? What do you hope will change? What do you hope will continue? Anything about the future that you're looking towards? And let's see, we'll start with Bahar.
Oh man, thank you. It's a big question. So my vision, actually, this is appropriate because I'm signing off of student committee this year. I mean, I see the organization growing. Like I said, we're very new, like just 2017 new. So we haven't been around for very long, but we're growing pretty fast, and our student membership is increasing like crazy. So my vision for this would be just a stronger and more cohesive, organization, MENA Psychology Network. And I also envision, I mean, this being a start, kind of like a start to coming together as student leaders. A lot of us have the same mission, we're trying to accomplish the same goals. And so my vision is both, building within our organization and supporting our students, providing those resources that we often are left by ourselves to find, just having to deal with that throughout our lives. But also collaborating with others and growing that way and building more relationships. So yeah, our vision is bright right now, I think, as I see it. And I'm really excited for, to see how it grows, because I'm definitely going to be involved probably for the rest of my life, from here on out. I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, and I will pass it to Kevin.
Thank you, Bahar. Yeah, so my vision, my committee and I talked about this a while back, and there's a few things that we were really hoping to emphasize this year, or yeah, these next couple of years. One was to kind of foster the student community. So in talking about the community, I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of, the communication over listservs are by the professional members who have been around for like decades, and they know each other very well. And when they see each other at conferences, it's like greeting family members. But I think because, their bonds were fostered over time, and I'm trying to do the same for student committees or student members. So, really trying to promote our social media presence, trying to have social events. And it's been pretty difficult with everything being virtual. But hopefully once we get back in person, we can kind of facilitate that as well, just to really get students to come together and like form bonds and connections, whether that's at the professional level or even at the personal level, to support each other. I think that would make the experience at AAPA much more fulfilling as well. We're also working really hard on continuing to establish that mentorship system. Right now, as I mentioned, it's kind of at like, we have one faculty member mentoring a group of students every like few weeks or so. But hopefully we can transition that, eventually make that a more individualized process, so that one mentor could take on a mentee and help them with research or navigating the professional world, or with clinical things. But we do have a lot more that I just don't have time to talk about right now, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a lot of cool, exciting things to look forward to. So if you're interested, please let me know. Thank you. And I will pass it over to Evan.
Thanks. So I think in terms of like vision, I tend to think like I guess like very big in that way. And one of the things I deeply hope for is, right, the Association of Black Psychologists, its express mission has never been located solely within the US, and we've done work internationally. And so it's been, how can we expand our capacity for the languaging, right? The languaging of the work that we do, so we can include African identified people, African descendant people, not just from the US or Anglophone countries, but again, throughout the diaspora, on the continent, wherever that might be. right? So that everybody can be engaged in these diaspora conversations that, again, really do shift and push our field forward. And the second one being that, again, I don't think all students have to wait until they get those degrees behind their name and before they can make significant shifts and significant pushes, right? I love the AMENA-Psy for allowing students to sit on the committees behind some of the most radical programming. And I believe that students need to have the position and support to engage in that work, again, in their student, I say quote unquote student, because they are pseudo professional lives, just not compensated as such. And so I would say continuing to support that, like not allowing other grant agencies to be the sole, arbiters of what work is valuable and what's not. Like an AMENA-Psy can support student work and push the kind of work that we need for our communities. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, hopefully. So we'll see what goes on. And I'm gonna pass that over to Kristen.
Yes, thank you for that, Evan. So I think one of the things that I have for the vision of our organization in regard to students is that, we continue to expand that community among students. I've been trying to, start up student talking circles and get students more engaged. I think it makes it a little bit difficult, like everybody has said, we are virtual. As of right now, a lot of us aren't near our our friends within the different programs. For example, like I'm in New York, so that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to kind of create that kind of community among us students. So that's kind of what I've been really trying to foster is, to create a sense of community among the students and have them be there and know that, there's other students that they can kind of rely on across the country to support them throughout this course of graduate school. Like this is an interesting time in all of our lives. And I think I want to make sure that they have that support kind of moving forward and know that they have people that they can turn to that may have had a similar experience to themselves. So trying to foster that, I think, is something that I want to do. And then also to foster the community outside of that. So what Bahar had said, making sure that we're making those connections with the other Empas, we're making connections among the organizations so that it's not just us being here within our organization, it's us being here and then also communicating with the greater Empas throughout the country. Because I feel like, as at least personally, as a minority, being able to, be able to connect to other people across the country is incredibly important so that I have that additional support. So I think really trying to foster those connections is really important moving forward. And that's what I want to continue to do within my next year term. And Elizabeth, take us away.
Thank you. I think this is a great question. Obviously, to continue to grow our student membership, and that's why you all are here. Hopefully you've heard some great things to get you interested in joining our Empas. But I think also just to continue to have our members have leadership opportunities. So expand students having, a seat at the table or recreating that table if need be. And also something a mentor told me a long time ago was that it's okay to be critical about the things that you love. And so as we continue to grow as an association and as an organization, that we continue to stay up to par with new ideas and things that need to shift and need to change, because that's how we continue to make our association the welcoming space that it has been for all of us. And so I hope that by having more student members join with more ideas, with more emphasis to advocate and to work and be rooted in liberation and social justice work, that we can continue to make our Empas completely to grow and change. And, I think when I first heard the word of Empa, I was like, minority. I was like, but we're not a minority. Look at us. Like, we're so out here. We're everywhere. And so I think that could also be something I would like to encourage our student members, is to not feel that we can only exist in one space and feel comfortable in it. And that means maybe a lot of creating those spaces outside of our Empas and continue to work together to reframe that and whatnot. And I think just to continue to get a lot of support from folks who are already in our profession to continue to encourage us to be those leaders that we're ready to be in and continue those pipelines, right? For me, not knowing about NLPA until later in my life, changed me. I wish I would have known in high school. I would have been more involved. And so to continue to open those avenues so that we can be in chapters in different universities and even connections with local high schools in those areas. Thank you, Sheila.
Oh, well, thank you everybody so much for answering those questions. I'm so glad we were able to hear from all of you for each of those, and just the sense of community feels so strong to me. And I, as a member of an AMENA-Psy, starting my 4th year in graduate school, I like echo that sentiment that Elizabeth, you just said. I wish I learned about my Empa earlier on. I think it really would have made a huge, huge difference. So now we'll shift over to taking some questions that we've gotten from the audience throughout the panel. We have quite a few questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can before we move into the breakout room portion. So we'll spend about the next 30 minutes doing that, or 25 minutes doing that. One thing I will say is not everyone has to answer every question if you feel like you don't want to or don't have anything you want to say, but of course you all can answer each question as well. So we'll start with this one. So what was your personal motivation to come together to do this panel? Do you want me to call any still? No, okay, Bahar.
Yeah, I'll start. I'll just start. You know, I think it was really important for us to come together as a group, because recognizing that there's so few of us in these spaces in psychology and higher education, that we often don't have the support we need, and we don't hear about, you know, just kind of piggyback off of what was just said, we don't know about these Empas. And I think that's something that I would put a plug in even for programs, you know, we get introduced to, you know, APA in various divisions. And, you know, I was, you know, introduced to SCP, the Society of Counseling Psychology, but no mention of an Empa or what AMENA-Psy was until I went to a conference and attended, you know, something. So for me, it was more about spreading awareness, coming together, and it was really important for me to meet other student leaders who have been working for a really long time. You know, these organizations have been established, learning and supporting each other, and to show, you know, solidarity, that we're all here for like similar missions. We're all trying to support our student membership, and, you know, like the whole theme, like we're the next leaders. So we can't do it alone. We know that there's power in numbers. And so that's my motivation. I just wanted to meet some really, really awesome people. And I'm not going to popcorn it because I don't know whoever wants to speak next, but I'll stop there.
Go for it, Evan.
I just saw Kevin unmuted. My bad, Kevin. No, I also want to share, I think, in addition to everything that Bahar said, is I think the last year and year prior to that, but especially, I guess, for me, last year, the idea of what solidarity authentically looks like and means has been like a very salient question, right? Not just, oh, I support this group. What does it authentically mean to bring our communities together, right? What are the historical traumas that it means to address so that our communities can authentically come together? Why do we see our communities as like separate ones that need to be brought together, right? All these questions, I think, are ones that need to be seriously considered that I did not see being like very, again, like deliberately engaged with in, I guess, more mainstream general psychology. And also, again, Bahar mentioned, like, we're the leaders. Everybody's mentioned, like, we're like the leaders. And I found like the leadership of a lot of these organizations tends to get suppressed, tends to get erased, only if it can get, the only time you kind of see it, if it can get leveraged by like an APA or another like major organization, just for, I guess, like a pseudo shallow level of representation at that level, right? And so to come together to kind of form a body that's authentically engaged and passionate, and to shift what it means to be well, what it means to be healthy, I think is powerful. And so I think this is something that we could build on. I know some of the elders that we, you know, all are in conversation with are continuing to build on. So that's why I want to come in, be in conversation with these people.
Yeah, I completely agree with Evan and Bahar so far. You know, I think there's just something really powerful about, you know, groups of people with similar histories of oppression coming together and working together and advocating for each other, right? I think, you know, especially in 2020 with everything that was just going on, I think again, it highlighted the importance of unity and solidarity and allyship. And that was a really big motivation of me to join, as well as what Bahar said about, just kind of representing APA and providing information for students who might be interested in joining or are looking for a place where they can be with like-minded people with similar experiences, right? A place to belong, perhaps. Because I certainly remember my experiences as an early graduate student, or even just even before that, not really feeling like I found a place where I belonged or fit in that well. And APA has meant so much for me in fulfilling that need, that I wanted to kind of share that with, the world and the community. Yeah, and I wanted to give a shout out real quick to AMENA-Psy, because they were the ones who initiated, and I was so happy when I got their email, because I was like, oh, I was already thinking at some point I really want to work with them, and then here, this opportunity kind of lands in my lap. And also shout out to all the Empa leaders for showing up today too. I mean, this is phenomenal.
I also want to echo a lot of what everybody else had said. When I also received that email from AMENA-Psy, I was like, this sounds amazing. Why haven't we done this before? This is wonderful. We need to do this. So, having that, and then knowing that, we're coming together as, 5 Empas and, providing each other with this additional support. Like Bahar has said multiple times, now that we're all connected, we're going to continue to be connected moving forward. And I think that's really important, because I feel like, having us be connected and being a part of each other's lives, I think is incredibly powerful. We're able to move forward and have this additional sense of support. And I think that's what we really need, not only through the course of graduate school, but also throughout our professional careers. And, a lot of us are kind of heading out of graduate school at this time. So thankfully, we're all moving on. And I think to know that I have other people in my corner to kind of help provide me with that support and know that we're there to support each other, I think is incredibly powerful. And I'm very thankful to be a part of this lovely group of people. And I think moving forward, we're just going to continue to push for change, and I'm excited to see where it heads.
All right, just wanted to see if anyone else wanted to answer that question. We'll move on to the next one. Okay. So another question we had, so this came in, I think a couple of folks were wondering how the Empas may be working with any grassroots organizations or leaders, or just working directly with community members, if you have any initiatives around that. I know some of you have mentioned that during the previous questions, but if you could share more about if that's part of your Empa's mission or work, or if it's something you're looking forward to doing.
I can share. I do know for sure in regards to our special interest groups, we do have some of the groups who have specifically worked with grassroots organizations or community organizations, or even as an organization, as NLPA, we've worked with other divisions to put out reports. So recently, I had the greatest pleasure to be on a committee on a Codapar APA grant that was made of not only NLPA, but other divisions, too many to name, to discuss how immigrants are being affected by harm due to the social political climate. And so by being able to collaborate with other divisions and organizations, we were able to pull out a report that just kind of explored our questions to local activists and what they were seeing and what harm they were identifying within these immigrant communities, and what we as psychologists, helpers, mental health providers, what we can do, even students or folks in the field, what we can do to try to support these folks in these communities, and how can psychology, the field of psychology and grassroots organizations work together for a mutual goal. And that goes a lot to NLPA's thought. Recently, last year, our conference theme was En la Quech. And to not make it too long, En la Quech is a Mayan saying or poem that describes how we see you in one another, how we're connected, how if you're going through harm or suffering, we are going through harm and suffering, and we together have to work together to support one another, and what that real collective unity looks like. And so to sum it up, we do have some work with the community members. I hope we can do more of that. I hope we can do more in regards to advocacy, maybe being more involved in policy making, or, you know, really observing that and giving some suggestions as that way. I think there's so much work to do still, but again, none of it can be done without current members, folks supporting those student members to become leaders, making those policy and actions work. And that's just a quick sum up of what we've been doing, but future plans for more things to come.
Yeah, I'll pop in. Because raise your hand is clutch.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Feel free to use that, everybody. Yeah.
I was just going to say, there's, in terms of working with grassroots organizations and collaborations of that sort, again, we kind of have a benefit of being around for, like, you know, decades and decades, but there's such a long history within the Association of Black Psychologists of doing just that, right? You could go as far back as, you know, the Black Panthers, when Angela Davis was on trial. The Association of Black Psychologists out in Oakland played a key role in making sure that they didn't stack the jury full of white, you know, racist people against her, right? So that's an example. You go all the way back. And today we've been working with, throughout the pandemic, to give grassroots organizations, there's Dear Black Prophets out in Jersey and DC. There's the Wichita Council of Community Elders, you know, to give them, you know, culturally salient, culturally grounded programming for, right, anti-Black racial trauma and promoting racial resilience. I also just want to note that I love Elizabeth mentioned the concept. I can't say it specifically, but it reminded me of the concept of Sawubona, which is what we've really been emphasizing over the past year. Sawubona, the idea of being I see you, we see you. Everything is about collective identity, right? Becoming into existence through being seen by another person. So it's this kind of stuff, right? These kind of concepts that we want to center because they're so essential, right, for our collective healing and our collective resilience.
All right. So maybe we'll use the raise hand feature moving forward too, if you want, just as a reminder that that's there. So the next question we have is, some folks have been asking if, you know, if your research or clinical interests don't necessarily align with, or I guess your research interests specifically don't necessarily align with studying, you know, these ethnic or racial groups that Empas represent, you know, is it still appropriate to join the Empa? Would you still find a place to belong? Especially if you share your identity with the Empa, but maybe not your, like, research interests. I see Bahar has raised her hand, so go for it, Bahar.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a common misconception, is that you have to be interested in, you know, research with or practice with MENA or Arab MENA populations, but that is not true. I think this is a community and a professional home for anyone who identifies as Arab MENA and looking for a place, you know, within psychology, or those who are interested in MENA issues. So we have both. I mean, I think, especially around like some of the programming we have, I held a dissertation writing group on Sundays, and that your dissertation can be on anything, you know, for members. It doesn't have to be a MENA related topic, but just coming together with individuals who probably still had similar experiences as you within the program, or some of the same challenges, current events happening, you know, kind of going through the same emotional turmoil. You know, we have space for everyone. So identifying, non-identifying, and that's also reflected in our membership options as well, that you can find on our website, but I won't take up more time.
Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah, and our organization is really similar to what Bahar had said. So if you are interested in doing research with Native Americans, that's something that, you know, we can help support you. However, if you are not interested in doing that, and you do identify with being Native American, but you are interested in other kind of domains within research, that's still something that, you know, you can come and be a part of SIP. There's a variety of people that are associated with SIP, people that identify with Native Americans and people that don't identify with Native Americans. As long as you have like an interest in, you know, Native American issues, that's kind of really what's important. And similar, like I said, very similar to what Bahar said, except in regard to, you know, Native American populations in regard to SIP. So if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to, you know, join our community. And that is also, you know, distinct in when you sign up for the membership. You can disclose like what your identity is and all of that when signing up, just so that, you know, if that's something that is a concern, you can kind of bring forth to that. But for the most part, you know, we welcome everybody to our community and know that you do have a place for us.
I'm talking too much, but I was just gonna say really quick is, yeah, so while, right, in the research and practice, Black people might be centered, I also don't want anybody to think, because I think sometimes this contributes to some of the erasure, that it's only about, you know, the work that's being done, it's only about Black people, right? People are centered in the narratives, but it's not only about Black people. Like there are a lot of concepts that come from the scholars of AMENA-Psy that are, again, center Black people, but are about transforming how the field looks at particular issues. And I think about Linda James Meyer's optimal conceptual theory, for instance, right? That centers an African-centered narrative, but again, is about how we all think about worldviews and how worldviews come into play in mental health problems. So those are specific constructs. But to answer the question, like, again, we're interested in supporting people in their career trajectory, in the development of themselves as professionals and activists and scholars and clinicians. So there's a home here for everybody, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add because, but yeah, I just want to emphasize too, APA is open to everyone who's interested in API issues. It's like API psychology. You don't have to be, you know, a graduate student just to join. But yeah, you know, one thing I really love is like a couple of conferences that I've attended, and I'm interested to do this myself in the future too, is when, you know, people of different communities attend each other's conferences. You know, just because this is API, there might be the misconception that only Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are allowed, but that is not the case. And, you know, I just really love seeing people kind of show up for each other in that sense, and like kind of show support, show that you're interested too. So yeah, we're open to anyone who's interested, basically.
I guess I can add really quickly everything what everyone has said. I do want to just know, and this is on our website, that NLPA does not presume to speak for all Latinx psychologists. Again, we're not a monolithic. We want to make that very clear. And obviously, as what everyone has already said, right, we want to be able to support us all. But we also want to reflect the respect and mental health and the dignity, the human rights and the civil rights of Latinx folks living in the US, and understanding the differences of their experiences. And so I think that's just important to know, but everyone is obviously welcome. And yeah, we just want to keep growing, and ditto to what everyone already said.
All right, wonderful. So hopefully we can get to maybe one, maybe two more questions, we'll see. So one question was, what has been challenging as a student in your organization? Any areas you're hoping to improve? Yeah, Bahar?
Okay. I think, well, I don't know about the second part of this question, but I think one of the more challenging pieces is time. You know, kind of working against us as graduate students specifically, you know, we only have so much time and energy that we can put towards, you know, these efforts or these initiatives. And with that, that's where the help and volunteering and coming and doing it together really, you know, steps up. Like I could not do 95% of what we do as a student committee if it wasn't for the student committee and that help. But the challenge of time, the challenge of also being students, you know, mostly everything, almost everything needs to be approved by, you know, the board. And of course, like there are initiatives that are really supported and we have a lot of autonomy in some spaces, but you know, there's experience that comes with leadership and just knowing the, you know, the kind of the ins and outs. So sometimes as students, I think we want to do a lot and then we realize like what we can do. So I would say it's not a challenge in like a negative way. It's just it's a learning curve, you know, and I think that's why as student leaders, it's so important to continue leadership because you kind of start this, you know, this path and this journey and learning about how it all works. But yeah, and then the time and the energy, you know, I think we want to do so much and we're so, you know, energized by it all and we're excited about it all, motivated. But then we got dissertation and we got comms and we got practicum and we got, you know, and then we got life. So yeah, I think that would be some of the bigger challenges, but that's where the community comes in and the mentorship will really help in those moments. So that's what I'll say about that.
I don't know if Elizabeth, you raised your hand or just clapped. Yeah, Evan.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. The only thing I was going to add, and I think everybody can also attest to this, is similar to like Bashar said, is like it's a lot of work, and yeah, I guess it's like the efficiency because it is a lot of like volunteer labor, right? So I mentioned a lot of initiatives that are happening with the Association of Black Psychologists. A lot of them are both simultaneously like undermanned, but even the idea of bringing people on sometimes can be difficult because it'll all come down to one person. And if that one person, something like Bar said, like if life happens, all of a sudden that one pipeline that somebody might have into that committee might get disrupted. And so I would say that's been a difficulty that we're definitely working on, is building our ability to expand capacity and the foundation so that people can more efficiently come in, do the work they need to do, take spaces they need to take it. Because right now, that's definitely a difficulty that somebody might find in terms of beginning a collaboration.
Okay, thank you everyone for answering that. Let's see, I think, just a moment here. Okay, I think maybe just one more question is, you know, if there's anything you haven't mentioned yet about how you might support students' professional development, like concrete ways to support students' professional development. That'll be our last question, and then we'll transition to the breakout room portion.
I know thank you. For our conference, I would say like students are doing all the things. Okay, we are doing our very best to do all the things. And I know in our last conferences, we have hosted panels or webinars for information about how to apply for internships, specifically how to apply for more competitive research-based internships, opportunities for postdoc. So we're doing that to try to support students who are transitioning in and out of graduate school. I can see more of that happening. I think what Evan and Bahar have already mentioned, I think it's just a lot of work sometimes that requires, and it's unpaid and it's on top of everything that we're already doing. And so, and I just want to name, like, if you decide to be part of our Empas, you can choose how involved you may or may not want to be in. I think that's important to also know. But if you do want leadership opportunities, those are available. And I guess that would be that and the mentorship program that I think is really great. And again, we have some growth edges there. We're trying to get all the students connected to the specific field that they want, but being able to have a specific mentor that you work with for a year or so can open so many doors and can be super instrumental, particularly if you don't have someone in your institution or program that is already connected with the Empa we're speaking about it with NLPA. And so that, to me, I think can really be a concrete way to help folks with the professional development. And yeah, being part of leadership, you learn as you go.
Yeah, Kristen.
So I think something that like Elizabeth had mentioned. So we also have the student mentorship program, which allows the students to be, how do I say this, matched up with a mentor. And like I said before, you know, they could be in early career, mid-career, late career, or you could be matched up with an elder within our community. So that's a really great way to help with professional development. Also, like I said, you know, when I had first joined this community, I had met someone who was a professional psychologist, and through the course of the very beginning, you know, they were able to help me formulate my idea around my dissertation and kind of move forward with that, and also become a part of my dissertation committee. So this is like a great example of just saying, like, you know, I just met this individual, you know, through the course of SIP at a conference, and then through that had developed a relationship with them, and they move forward with ending up being on my dissertation committee. So there's a variety of ways that can kind of happen among our students, but, you know, really getting to know other people within the organization through the conferences that we do have. Like I said, we have one at the end of June, and kind of moving forward with that and developing those relationships that you're likely to have, like, you know, through the course of your career. So there's a lot of opportunity for professional development, like I said, but, you know, it comes in a variety of different forms. You know, you could have you could have a mentor through the mentorship program, or you could just meet someone at a conference, and then they end up, you know, really formulating, you know, what your professional development ends up being and how that moves forward and influences your graduate school career and forth.
Yes, Bahar.
Yeah, I won't like repeat everything, but similarly, the conference, presenting at conference for professional development, presentation skills. But other things that I think student committee does offer is we also give presentations like to each other, you know, and open that. So in terms of professional development, if any member wants to present, you know, on something to the membership, then those are presentation skills. And often, you know, we have very few spaces where people are interested in hearing our work. And I think the other challenge within, you know, for Arab and MENA identifying students is that because we're racially categorized as white, you know, in the census and across academic institutions, we often, you don't see many of us, I think, in other leadership positions for ethnic minority groups or, you know, diversity initiatives like we try to be, but often if there are like scholarships or, you know, other sorts of programming that are for ethnic minority students, we're often not included. We actually weren't included until like this year for like the minority fellowship program on their website, in which, you know, we emailed and said, can you please put us on there? So these opportunities for like leadership aren't really offered. So within the organization, we do the best we can to build those skills. We have our own internship working group that we formed last year to support one another in writing statements that center our identities as, you know, Arab or MENA, and, you know, our interests in our research. And so we just kind of help each other through also not only just peers, but then the mentorship and people before us who have just either applied or finished internship or postdoc and that sort of thing. So I want to be honest about like that professional development piece is that we're doing a lot of it within and growing and building our confidence as, you know, Arab MENA psychologists.
Okay, anybody else want to answer that one? I think good. Okay. So now I'll just take a moment before we transition to the breakout portion, since this might be the last time we're all in this main room together, to just say thank you so much to all the student leaders for coming together, for your willingness to do this panel and to connect and form these relationships and hopefully move forward, continuing on our partnerships and our relationships for many years to come and laying the foundation for that. I hope that everybody who attended today learned something about each of these groups. Thank you so much to all the attendees. And I also want to thank the AMENA-Psy Student Committee for your support and help in planning this panel, as well as our behind the scenes tech folks. Shout out to Khadija, Natalie, Evan, and Cindy behind the scenes helping us out with various things. And yeah, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to put up a slide with all the contact information for all the different Empas. And then we're going to post the breakout room like box where you can select which breakout room